everyone. Welcome to today's panel. I'm so excited for everyone to join us for our screenwriters panel. I'm Jess Vu. My pronouns are she and her. I want to get started in terms of our land acknowledgements before we begin the panel. So we would just like to acknowledge that tonight in our respective locations, in my case, Los Angeles, that we have gathered on the ancestral lands of the Tongva, the Tapiam, and the Chumash. We acknowledge that the first people of this land, which we reside and hold this virtual event.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolina.
I'm David Lee Huynh, he, him, his.
Jonathan, you're muted.
A little technical problem here.
All right. I'm Jonathan, he, him, his. The Song Collective is based on unceded Lenape-Hoking, land of the Lenape people territory, which spans from western Connecticut to eastern Pennsylvania, the Hudson Valley to Delaware, with New York City at its center. We recognize that this land was forcibly taken and sovereignty was never ceded. We acknowledge the brutal history of genocide, the displacement, and the dispossession of indigenous people from their ancestral lands. We acknowledge that after stolen lands, there were also stolen people. We respectfully recognize and thank the generations of enslaved and displaced people who built and continue to build the country that we occupy today.
We also recognize the long violent history of colonization and imperialism that has displaced generations of people from their ancestral lands, including ourselves. As Viet identifying folks who were resettled here in the US, we acknowledge our own complicity in enacting and contributing to the violence against and the erasure of indigenous communities and other communities of color. As Viets of Kinh ancestry, the ethnic majority in Vietnam, we also recognize the long history of genocide, displacement, and oppression against indigenous populations in Vietnam that still continues in this very moment. As we gather in this virtual space, and one day soon in a physical space, we acknowledge the legacies of colonization embedded in our technology, the land, and the structures we use to connect with one another, and its disproportionate impact on indigenous communities and communities of color globally.
We commit to honoring our collective ancestors, past, present, and future, who have and continue to steward the land. We invite our community to learn the history of the people who have walked the earth before us. We invite our community members to take accountability for themselves, one another, and to become better stewards of the earth. We call for the building of a new world that fights for true freedom and liberation of all who exist on this planet. While we're here today, we'd love to have your attention and your advocacy in the growing calls for the release of Matthew Rushin from the Virginia's prison system. Matthew Rushin is a Black autistic man who was sentenced to 50 years for his role in a car crash after a rushed conviction process. He has been conditionally pardoned by the governor, but has now been diagnosed with COVID-19 after not receiving adequate health care for months. To follow his case and to advocate for his immediate release, please follow Justice for Matthew Rushin on Instagram. We're going to give the banner at the bottom so that you can see it and follow it. Here you are, as 4, as in the number 4. Thank you all for being here today.
And with that said, we want to thank our community partners, diaCritics, VAALA, CAPE, East-West Players for their support for our series of panels throughout the month. But before we get started on the panel, David will introduce our musical guests.
Yes, thank you. And now we'd like to start with a musical performance from our good friend, Tony Aidan Vo.
Enjoy.
What's up, everybody? I'm Tony Aidan Vo. I'm an actor-musician. My pronouns are he, him, and I am based in Brooklyn, New York. I'm excited to be here to play a song for you. This song is called Sunshine. I hope you like it. can't believe a whole year's come and gone. This stays the same, your smile's still my sun. But I don't believe in my own stories anymore. Lover, you're what I live for. Don't go away, my sunshine. Will you be mine? Don't go away, my sunshine. I won't take my love from you this time now. And now I don't know where to stand. I'm looking for you, looking for your warmth. And I don't believe in my own failures anymore. The sweetest love I ever had was yours. So don't go away, my sunshine. Will you be mine? Oh, don't go away, my sunshine. I won't take my love from you this time now. Oh, won't you come and stay? Oh yeah, you brighten my days. Oh, won't you come and stay? Oh yeah, you brighten my days. Oh, don't go away, my sunshine. Will you be mine? Oh, don't go away, my sunshine. I won't take my love from you this time. Thanks so much.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Tony. You're always amazing. We're such fans of you, so thank you so much for being a part of our community. Without further ado, I would love to introduce you to our moderator for tonight, Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey everyone, my name is Hoai-Tran Bui. I'm a writer and film and TV critic for Slash Film based in New York City. My pronouns are she, her. I've also written for publications like USA Today and The Washington Post, often focused on issues of diversity and representation on the screen. So it gives me great pleasure to moderate this panel for the Song Collective in this conversation with Vietnamese American screenwriters and how they've navigated the ever-changing entertainment industry on both sides of the pond. So with that, why don't we meet our panelists? First, Eirene Donohue. Donohue, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Eirene Donohue, she, her. I am I'm originally from Rhode Island, grew up in Rhode Island. My mom's Vietnamese. My dad is like Boston Irish, and they met during the war. He was in the Navy, and I'm the youngest of 7. And I traveled around the world for a really long time and then settled in LA about 10 years ago to pursue screenwriting. And I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I don't know.
Great intro. All right, next, Vicky Liu. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Vicky Liu, she, her. I'm a television writer currently working on Superstore on NBC. I came to LA to attend film and television school at USC School of Cinematic Arts years ago. I won't say how long. And then, yeah, I've been in LA ever since. What do I say about myself? I've been writing for television for a while now, and then I have a cat and a wife, and that's all you're gonna get out of me.
Well, I hope we'll get more out of you since we do have an hour to fill for this panel. But last but not least, Leon Lay, please introduce yourself to the crowd.
Hi, my name is Leon Lay, he, him. I'm Vietnamese. I came to California when I was 13 years old, and then I moved to New York in 2000. That was, oh my gosh, 21 years ago, to pursue my dream of being on Broadway as a dancer and performer, dancer, singer. And I achieved that dream, and then I got bored. I'm like, oh, this is it. So in search for something else, some meaning of my life, I turned into filmmaking, and my first feature film was, which I wrote and directed, was released 3 years ago in Vietnam, and it just had its American release at the end of 2020, which you can watch now streaming on Amazon, Hulu, Vudu, Fandango, YouTube, iTunes, and whatnot. And that's pretty much about me.
Yeah, and that film is Song Lang, and it's a really gorgeous film. I got to catch it recently, and I was really blown away by it. So,
oh, thank you so much.
It was a worthwhile leap over to the other side of the camera, I think.
Thank you.
So why don't we start off our conversation with all three of you, telling us how you got started in the entertainment industry. Eirene, why don't you go first?
Well, when I grew up, I was always, obsessed with film and old Hollywood. I worked in a video store in high school, and I thought I was going to be like Quentin Tarantino. But then I went to Brown, and their film department there was very theoretical and a little pretentious. And so I was like, I don't want to do this. So then I became a history major and switched over to writing more like memoir stuff, and just put the screenwriting Hollywood dream aside for a while, and ended up working abroad. And I taught English in Japan for a while, and went to Vietnam and traveled around Vietnam and South Africa and a bunch of places. And then finally, when I was around 30 or so, I just decided to pursue it. I was like, I've always wanted to, why don't I write a screenplay? I'd done some freelance writing, I'd written a novel, but finally was like, this was always my dream, I should do it. So I got some books on how to write screenplays, and I read a couple screenplays, and I wrote a screenplay. And I entered into the Nickel Fellowship, which is the amateur film competition, screenwriting competition run by the Academy Awards. And I entered it and made it to the semifinals. And so also at that point, I was living in Rhode Island, and my husband and I decided we weren't living the life we wanted to be living. So we sold everything we owned, and we moved out to LA in our VW van, and spent a year driving around the US and Canada in our VW while trying to, get started. And after I made it to the semifinals, I was connected to my manager, and he was like, if you really want to do this, you got to move to LA. And I was like, park down the street, done. Okay, I'm here. So then that was pretty much how it started. I just started going out on meetings and sending out scripts, and luckily pretty quickly sold a feature pitch to Lionsgate for a female college comedy, and then sold a pitch to MTV and wrote a TV movie for them called Ladies Man, and then sold a spec pilot script. I decided to start to try writing TV. So I wrote a TV pilot and sold that to ABC Studios called Borrington, which was actually based on my life. And so it has the Vietnamese mom It's like about a woman who like moved, because I had moved back home when I was 30 to live with my parents in my hometown. And so it was all about that. So it had like the Vietnamese mom, it had the like Boston Irish Navy dad and everything. And so I was super excited when that sold, because I was like, yay. But then of course, as you know, in this business, like things don't get made. It was great to sell it. But then, so since then I've just been writing. I wrote a bunch of TV movies and have been working on features and going back and forth between TV and features and TV movies. And recently just did, wrote a Christmas movie for Lifetime that just aired called A Sugar and Spice Holiday, which was their first Asian-centered holiday movie, which was super exciting and fun. And so, yeah, so basically I just decided in terms of like how I got started, I was like, I want to write a screenplay. So I wrote a screenplay. And I think that's how everyone, because I feel like a lot of people want to be screenwriters, but they don't write screenplays. So I would say the very first step that you have to do to become a screenwriter is to actually write that screenplay. And then you know, get it out into the world.
It's great advice.
They're like, I have a great idea for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or I've always wanted to be a screenwriter. I have a great idea for a movie. Like, I'll give you my idea and you can write it. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's
yeah. If you want it, then you have to
write your own story.
Yeah.
Everybody write their own story. Yeah. So I was really fortunate. Things happened in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky to get representation pretty early. That helped a lot.
And that was pretty recent, right? Like you made it seem like you kind of came about this as like a second career almost.
I mean, it's been about 10 years. I think I moved out to LA like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been in the past 10 years. I spent my 20s just traveling and temping in New York, living in New York, temping, bartending, traveling, teaching abroad, and just sort of like saying I was going to be a writer, but not actually writing anything. But yeah, once I sort of focused on it, then it became my goal. It was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And that would be the other sort of advice that I would have to people trying to get started is just stay with it. Just, it's really hard. And there's lots of, even if you have initial success, like I did early, but then there have been some long, tough stretches in between. And so you just have to sort of believe in what you're doing and keep writing. Just keep writing and living and collecting stories is my best piece of advice for people trying to get started.
So alternately, Vicky, you've been in the industry for quite a while too. You've been, I think, writing for like 10 plus years in the TV industry. Why don't you tell us about how you got into TV entertainment industry?
Yeah, I would say same as Eirene, same story. No, completely different story. Yeah, I started, but similar, an interest as a young age, kind of just making silly short films in high school with your friends and thinking it's just like a hobby, but really enjoying it, but thinking like, I'm not going to have this career because, I had semi-stereotypical parents of just being like, well, you're obviously going to end up being like a lawyer or like a doctor or something. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Definitely going to do all that. Meanwhile, like still making silly short films with friends, getting to a point where, you're applying to college. I really didn't think about it until then, getting to a point where I was like, I think I'm going to apply to film school. I think I do want this as my career, as my future, and making that decision and, talking it over with my parents. Them actually being very supportive, they really leapt from thinking that it was like art as being a very, unstable career choice to immediately, I think it really helped that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I think was like very big around that point. And they're like, well, you'll just be like Ang Lee. And I'll be like, yes, exactly. That's the same trajectory he and I have. We're on the same page. So going out to USC film school and television production, I kind of thought I would start off doing directing a little bit more. I was more interested on the production side in terms of directing and editing and taking all those classes and going through those things. But, writing has always been a little bit in the background for me, writing short stories, writing poetry and prose, and exploring that through college, meanwhile, like going through the production track. And it really wasn't until after I graduated college, immediately got into the production assistant game, which is a crazy world. And I was a production assistant for so long, really thought I was like, this is it. I'm going to live and die as a production assistant, and just going from show to show to show. It's like a weird freelancing world, and you're working on hours that other people are going to sleep. And, you know, it's a very thankless job. So if you're a PA, like, God bless you, you know, you're doing, it's like really all the stereotypical things you see where, you know, I had odd jobs of watching someone's car, or, you know, getting coffee, or filling gas up for somebody, or making a sandwich, and, you know, all those like little shitty jobs that you hear about. They're very true. And it's like things that you do. And you're like, thank God I went to private school for this. My parents must be so proud. And then, but really like paying my dues, it felt like. That's at least what I was telling myself. Paying my dues, making the connections, learning about the industry, getting to a point where I became an assistant, and I met my writing partner at that point, Bridget Kyle, and we were both assistants on a television show. And we realized that, hey, why don't we partner up and try to write a freelance script together? Because a lot of TV shows, sometimes they will, a certain amount of episodes, they'll give out a freelance script either to like one of usually it's an assistant, sometimes it is an outside writer. So we teamed up and we're like, let's try and write a script and get something in. And it kind of sparked, like, I've never really considered being a writer again. I'm still a little bit like, maybe I'll direct or edit, and then, but gave writing a chance because I've always liked it. But just like worried because it's like hard. Like, as Eirene said, it's like, it's hard to just like write something and complete something. So you're starting a lot of half projects and never finishing something. Having a partner was really good for that, for me, to complete a project. So we did it. We wrote a pilot, original pilot. We really liked it. Of course, the show that we were working on got canceled, so there was no freelance script. So we're like, cool. But we had this piece, and our bosses were very nice, and they read it and they liked it, and they passed it on to their agents. And it was sort of this like perfect storm situation where we kind of got picked up through a UTA and just like went on meetings right away. And they, you know, we're a very good deal. You know, we were like 2 for 1, basically, having like a writing partnership, and, you know, 2 women in comedy at the time, still at the time, they always make it seem like we're like this unicorn of a thing, even though we're not. It's always like 2 women in comedy, one of you is diverse, one of you is white. Oh, look, this is a dream combo.
Funny woman, what an anomaly.
Yeah, this is crazy, you know, and a lot of shows being like, they need women, so you're it. So we'll send you on that meeting. Going on that, but we got very fortunate. Our first show was Marry Me on NBC. Couldn't have worked with a better staff, by David Casp, and we got very lucky. And then that was sort of the beginning of it. And went and the latest thing we were on was Superstore. We joined season 2, and we've been there ever since. And we're on season 6 now, and that's been the thing. So yeah, we've rose up there, and we're both co-executive producers on Superstore now, and just have been there forever. But this is unfortunately the last season of Superstore. So who knows where the wind will take us next.
Yeah, and Superstore, I personally haven't watched it myself. I apologize. I'll get around to it at some point. But I know it's got a big cult following. Like, people really rallied for it when it was on the verge of cancellation at one point. And I think that there's a possibility with the streaming world as it is right now, maybe it'll continue on.
Maybe, yeah.
All right. Leon, why don't you tell us a little bit? You gave us a little bit of a peek earlier when you talked about how you went from performing to being a filmmaker, but tell us how you got started in the entertainment industry, and how you got where you are now.
I'm Googling Superstore. I'm like, oh, this show, I want to check it out. Yes, so I actually, filmmaking was never my interest. To begin with, I was passionate about theater, and actually, more specifically, it's cải which is Vietnamese traditional opera. That was my passion, and I was like, I want to grow up to be a cải performer, and then we moved to the States, so I knew that that's not going to happen. And then I just happened to find musical theater because I accidentally stumbled upon a video of Miss Saigon, the making of Miss Saigon. That was 1992, and it was playing in LA. So oh my God, this is so fun. What is it? The music, the dancing, and there's a story, and it doesn't sound like opera. What is it? It's not opera. And then I found out, oh, it's a musical theater. There's many different type of music. They could sing jazz or pop or classical, and it's playing in LA for $15. You can buy a cheap box seat, and it's about Vietnam. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go see it. So I still remember the moment I went to see Miss Saigon, I was sitting in the box seat, and the moment the curtain opened, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I found my replacements for my earlier passion, which is Vietnamese opera. Now this is like the same thing, but it's in English. I was like, yeah, I don't have to abandon my dream. I'm still able to do it. So that's when I start taking classes, acting, singing, dancing, and eventually I moved to New York to pursue musical theater. But fast forward, after like 15 years being a chorus boy most of the time, which is not as fulfilling anymore. I starting to find that there are auditions that I go out for. I don't really want to do the show. I don't really want to work for that director or choreographer, nor have respect. But yet, I still find myself like have to go and do all the things I need to do in order to book the job, just to survive and just to stay a working actor. And then I just realized that, well, this is not why I got into the business to begin with, because at the beginning, as I entering the business, I already make peace with the fact that I'm always going to be poor. So now, what am I doing? Trying to secure a lifestyle and then, forgotten why I'm here in the first place. So that's when I start turning into like creating more things. I turned into photography. Then I turned into because I was doing fashion photography, and I found that when I was doing photography, I always trying to tell a story with the still images, or when I was taking a photo, I always like, oh, imagine all this thing in my head. So I'm like, well, what am I just making something like moving pictures? Let's just do with video instead. So I turned to video, and I'm making music videos and short clips, and then I turned to short films, and then finally I'm just like, what? Let's just try to make a movie, and see if and with Song Lang, originally it was supposed to be a stage play, a stage cải lương opera, a live opera performance in Vietnam. But then by the time I went back to Vietnam, that was 2007. I realized that cải lương was fading away. People just don't go anymore. And I realized that even though I was willing to invest all my time and taking financial loss, artistically, I'm not going to be able to achieve what I set out to do in the first place. So I figured if I turn this project into a movie, at least it will be there forever, and it will able to reach a wider audience and internationally. And that's when I'm like, let's see if I can turn this into a movie script. And then that's how it happened. And it took 10 years from 2007 until 2017 for me to actually find the funding and the time to go back to Vietnam for 3 years to make the film.
Wow. And you were based in New York. So I was wondering why you decided to cross over to the Vietnamese film industry to make Song Lang instead of trying to get some funding or get a footing in the American film industry. And what differences did you find between those two?
So there are a couple of reasons why I decided to go back to Vietnam. First of all, when I first starting to make short films and then eventually making Songlang, I wanted to always give an opportunities to Asian American, Asian performers, Asian talents altogether, especially Vietnamese, because as a performer, I knew in firsthand that there are so little opportunities out there for Asian Americans and Asian performers and Vietnamese Americans, especially. So I feel like, well, if I'm gonna put in the time and energy to do something, why don't, one stone, two birds, and write something that, first of all, I'm gonna be more familiar with. I'm gonna write about Asian culture, especially Vietnam culture. And at the same time, I create more opportunities for Asian performers, for Asian talents. In terms of so both of my short films had Asian leads, Asian story, and with Song Lang, because it started out to be a Cải Lương play, it has to be taken place in Vietnam. It was never an option. My manager always like, well, why don't you just, we could shoot it here, and it could be in English. It could reach a wider Vietnamese, a wider audience. It doesn't have to be Vietnamese. I'm like, no, the whole point is it has to be Vietnamese. The film is about Vietnamese culture. I want to film it in Vietnam, in that air, I want to submerge myself in the pollution and the food and the fish sauce. Otherwise it's not gonna be Song Lang. It's not gonna be Cải Lương. And then going back there, I just realized that there are so many amazing stories to be told, and Hollywood probably don't need another director. I don't have the drive or the passion to trying to break down those doors, and I have no desire to make another typical Hollywood films. I want to make I want to tell the story that I want to tell, and right now there are a lot of great Asian stories and Vietnamese stories that I want to tell.
So this is a question for all three of you. All three of you, as you've described, have come from different walks of life into the entertainment industry. And I was curious whether you found any differences in between breaking into the entertainment industry as a first-generation Vietnamese American like you, Leon, or a third culture kid like you, Eirene, or Vicky. I didn't catch if you were first or second generation Vietnamese, but I know that you talked about your parents being surprisingly supportive of your decision to go into entertainment industry. And so I wanted to know whether you guys had certain specific expectations from your family, and whether going to the entertainment industry went against that, or whether they were supportive of that.
Mm-hmm. My family was very supportive of it. I think my father was a poet when he was younger, and a writer, and so he was very passionate about supporting all of our artistic endeavors. So one of my older sisters is a dancer, choreographer, performance artist in New York. Another sister was an artist. Another brother wanted to be an actor. So whenever any of us wanted to pursue anything creative, they were very supportive. It was actually my Vietnamese mom. She was the one that was like, "Why you no doctor or lawyer?" She's like, I have all these kids, and there's no doctors and no lawyers, all starving artists. Now she's very proud, but at the time she was like, they sent us to these fancy. You had to work hard though. You had to get good grades so that you could. There was definitely that thing where it's you work hard, you put in the work, you do your best. But you can do whatever you want, but you just have to make sure that you have to know how to type so you can support yourself by temping, basically, or bartending. You have to be able to support yourself financially, but you can go do whatever you want. So most of my siblings and I, we all they were very good about being you go after your dreams and pursue it. So I know that was different than a lot of my Asian friends' parents. Sort of their upbringing, where it was much more expected that they would follow safer, more traditional paths of like being a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, things like that. So
yeah, I think similar. And then, but yeah, I think my parents were supportive because they did also come from a place, you know, they immigrated here and, you know, I was first generation, but they were, we had a family owned restaurant, right? So they kind of did the thing of, they were very like classic immigrant story where they started from nothing and they like built this restaurant together as a family and, you know, ran into a bunch of no's and ran into a bunch of people telling them they shouldn't do this because it's like, you know, to run a restaurant, it's like a huge gamble. You know, you could be very successful or you could just invest all your money and it's nothing. So they understood that idea of starting from a place where people are just like thinking like, well, that's going to be too hard to do, you know? And I think they instilled that in us and being like, if that's ever the case, then that's like a challenge that you want to take on a little bit. At least that's like what I've instilled in myself. And my parents would be like, I don't think we taught you any of that. But I really think that they, you know, by leading by example, that's what I've taken from them, of just seeing that they came from that place of working hard, similar to, yeah, going into industry and knowing everything is like, this system is not set up for me to succeed. Like this very age old industry is not, you know, I grew up, I was a huge TV kid. You grow up not seeing anything that represents myself, not seeing anybody there's no Steven Spielbergs and there's no, you know, Ron Howards that you see really. Even like writers, it's just like all the writers that you see, none of them look like me at all. So to be able to look at that landscape and be like, okay, well, I guess I'll try and see what happens. It's sort of already, you have to be at this place of like, I'm going to do something a little bit crazy. And having parents to look at that and go like, okay, I kind of get where you're coming from. You're going to like challenge the system a little bit, whether they acknowledge that or not. You know that that's what you're doing, and you know that they're supporting you because they come from this place of like, hey, we immigrated here and we were told no. We were told that like we were going to have to scrape by. And so there was that, I think that mindset really helped my parents, you know, eventually get on board and be supportive of me. But again, with that, like going back to, but as long as you're like super successful at it, like don't do it unless you're going to be successful at it. And it's like, yes, for sure. I'm going to guarantee that. But that is like the drive, right? Ultimately, you're like, it's funny because like, of course you want personal success for yourself, but it really is a little bit like, well, I can't fail because my parents are going to be super pissed at me. So I really have to be successful in this industry. Like, I just can't do it. I can't fail. So that was a lot of like the driving force to like keep pushing in this industry, even though it's tough, and it was tough to like go into it.
What about you, Leon?
My parents, I think they're very supportive. I think my father, he was a lawyer, but on the side, he's very artistic. He paints, and my stepfather, he was a documentary director, and he was the vice president of Vietnam main TV station in southern Vietnam before 1975. So they always, you know, very artistic, and my mom is very supportive. Like she was the one who was going around and do crowdfunding for one of my short films, which is really sweet. So, and I think early on she knew that she's not going to be able to stop me from pursuing my passion, and she knew that I was passionate about cải lương when I was little, and she always said that, oh my God, thank God that we moved to America when we did, because otherwise you would end up being a cải lương performer, and where would you be now? That cải lương is, you know, kind of like dying, and but yeah, they're super supportive, so I'm very lucky in that way. But yeah, I've never really considered myself a film. Even till now, I still don't consider myself a filmmaker. I feel I'm just like trying things, and I love them all. And I definitely don't consider myself a screenwriter. The only reason I'm writing because I am. There are things that there's certain topics that I want to do, to make films about those kind of topics, but nobody's like giving me scripts for those kind of films. So I have to write it myself, and it's kind of like, it's like breaking, it's like pulling teeth for me. But yeah, I prefer to do those the stories that I want to tell. So I have to learn how to like write myself.
All three of you had to sort of carve out your own places in the industry, and you've been working at it for several years now. And I'm wondering whether you guys see a difference between when you first started in screenwriting and filmmaking and performing, and to now, when there is a bit more of an embrace for diverse Asian-led stories.
Oh, definitely. It is. I mean, just in the past 10 years, it's like night and day. Because when I started, everything I wrote, almost all of the main characters usually were like 80% of what I wrote. They were always white. It was like that. I was just, that's what it's going to sell. Like it's that you would just write a story that was like, it could be any ethnicity, but like, that they're going to assume that it's the white leads. And and I'd have to like sneak in like the subversive Asian sidekick sort of character. And so over the years, like, even though I'd be going in for like diversity slots, and diversity initiatives and everything like that, they still weren't really like pushing for Asian stories. Whereas literally, I mean, thank God for Crazy Rich Asians. Because that, like, it was a palpable shift. Like, Crazy Rich Asians opened, did really well, and suddenly people were just much more open and like asking me for Asian story. Like, I actually, in the past few years, I had a spec pilot that I'd written where I had made the characters white, and they're like, can we make them Asian? And like, that's happened with like 3 of my projects where they're like, of scripts that I'd written in the past with white leads, where people are like, what if we made them Asian? Like, can we do like, and I'm like, okay. And then and then in the past year, like, people have actually, or past 2 years, like 80% of the projects that I've developed have from the beginning been Asian focused. Like, they want Asian stories. They want them to be specifically Asian. Right now, I'm actually developing and about to pitch a feature rom-com set in Vietnam with a male Vietnamese lead. And this is for like, it will be like a mainstream, it's not like it's like a mainstream big romantic comedy with a actress attached. And so like, it's just, and when we brought that idea to them, they were like, yeah, that would be, like, we really want to set a movie in Vietnam. Like, and so everything seems to have changed in the past couple of years. There's so many more shows on TV that are, with Asian casts or Asian stories, so many more features coming out. And even in like Asian central movies, there are just more Asian characters. And I know that from the writers that I know, from Asian writers that I know, are having the same experience that I have. And there's a lot more in the past year. I feel like I've met with like 4 or 5 production companies that were founded by like successful Asians who are like, I want to specifically focus on Asian American content. And that is like completely different than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I feel similarly, like right on the dot. I mean, like Crazy Rich Asians, it's so funny. It was such a clear shift. And then we made a pilot shortly after that where we casted, we just shot the pilot, didn't go forward to series, but we casted an Asian lead. And that to me, like, was huge. And, we finally casted an Asian that wasn't just the sidekick, which we totally had to do like 2 years ago even, and it was just like that shift that you felt like, I mean, it's good and bad because like the reaction is if it's just like, hey, what if we casted this Asian lead? And everyone's just like, yes, why haven't we done that before? And it's like, I don't know, man, you guys are calling the shots. I'm like, of course we wanted to do Asian leads for a really long time. So it's just like this like weird shift as everyone's like eyes have opened for the first time. Even though there's been a push, there's been Asian creatives that are like, yes, I want to tell my story. I want to put people on the screen that represent me. So it's like good. It's a little gross, but it's good ultimately to get those stories out there. But yeah, and even, behind the scenes staffing wise, I haven't written on that many shows, but like from the shows that I've been on, yeah, like I can go into a room from my experience and other writers I know that it's like you look around and you go like, oh, I am the diversity hire because I am the only person of color in this room. So, you know, that is definitely shifting, which I think is a really huge part of it, you know, like on the other side, to get the creatives behind the scenes and to have them be giving their input and their point of view. And now you can go into a room and again, it's still very new. So I've had some writer friends that are like, oh my God, I'm in a room and there's another Asian writer. And that's the craziest thing I've ever experienced. This has never happened before. You know, I've written for 10 plus years. This is the first time I've been in a writer's room with another Asian female even. And yeah, going into a room and seeing that and almost playing that game of like, which one of us was the diversity hire? There's so many of us now. That's so crazy. Look at that. You know,
diversity hires, Vicky. I think I was up for the Marry Me diversity slot.
Oh my God.
And they told me when I didn't get it, I was like, I got this one. Like I had the best meeting with David. I was friends with Gordon. Like,
oh my
I was
God.
like, this is gonna be my first staffing job. I'm so excited. And then they were like, oh, they went with this writing team. And like, and so you were totally
I stole your job. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. There wasn't enough spots. I should have been
I mean, like the two Vietnamese writers, right? Like,
I know.
I'm glad you got it.
There can only be one. There's like that's one. Two.
Yeah.
What would we do with two? It's like, ugh.
I don't know.
So that's exactly. So now it's like, I mean, hopefully more rooms are just like, yes, whoever is the most qualified and good, like, let's just hire them. It doesn't need to be based on like what's the algorithm that we need to fit everybody, but definitely starting off slow, but it's like it is getting a little better, and at least hopefully that landscape makes it so that you're catching up to the other way around and getting more, because that's saying like on top of the creative, it's like the exec level and above, like those are where we really need to see more diversity, because it is like ultimately they're calling the shots a little bit, and we can have as many people of color creatives as we can, and we're all telling great stories, but who's greenlighting them, who's saying let's do this? And those are a little bit of the people that not only looking like, you just want a bunch of white people looking at us as like commodities of like crazy Asian money. I guess these Asians can make money. You want people of color in executive positions like, I relate to this material and that's why I like it, and that's why I want to bring it forward to the world. So hopefully we can get more diversity over there.
So Leon, you're kind of in a different place because you're more working in the Vietnamese film industry, but are you seeing any of the ripples over there in terms of just like that demand for greater representation in Hollywood?
Not in Hollywood, but there's always ambition, to like, we want to make films that able to go to festivals and let them know that Vietnamese film is up there now. There are great stories, and within the Vietnamese film industry, it's really growing really fast. The first time I came back to Vietnam was 2007. There's going to be like 1 or 2 Vietnamese movie out a year, and usually only during Tết, Vietnamese New Year. And fast forward to 2017, now we have like 60 film a year or 70 film a year. And basically every weekend there's 1 or 2 films, film premieres. So that's, but with that, it's a double-edged sword as well, because there's a lot of crappy films, crappy products. Everybody thinks that, a film is the easiest way to make money, which I don't know where that thinking is coming from, even though only like very small percentage of the films actually become a hit at box office. But no, definitely, if you watch all the films like before 2010 and 10 years after, you can see like it's a huge change. The writers are getting better. The directors, the young directors, there's a lot of young directors coming up, and within just within like the 4 or 5 years, there's great films that get but getting great recognitions in international film festivals. So it's great. It's very exciting. I don't know if you guys ever be interested in going back to Vietnam or some kind of collaborations, Eirene and Vicky.
Yeah.
Because it's very fun. It's definitely I've never really had the Hollywood experience, so I don't know what it's like. But in Asia altogether, it's very exciting. Like you can feel the energy. Like, you know, Vietnam is watching Thailand, watching Korea, watching Chinese, watching Taiwanese, and we can feel that they're watching us as well. You know, like on Twitter, the fans are actually watching each other's. They have idols, that Vietnamese idols that are becoming more popular in Japan. Like on Twitters, like basically now Vietnamese pop star and actors, they have fans all around Asia.
That's cool.
Not just in Vietnam, which is like a great sign.
Yeah.
That, you know,
Yeah, you guys should exchange some contact info after this.
How many bedrooms do you have? Like, is there enough space? Because LA is a mess. I'm happy to go to Vietnam right now.
All right, with that, why don't we head over to the audience Q&A? We have a couple of questions from the live chats that we have for us, and I'll read a couple of them in the time we have left. So this is a question from Han Pham to the entire panel. Do you ever feel the imposter syndrome when putting yourself at the position of director/showmaker, and how do you overcome that?
A lot of weed. I'm just kidding. A little bit of weed. No, yeah, I think everybody does. I think the key is everybody feels this. Like the most successful person, you know, even at least that's what I tell myself. And like, I think it's just, you have to just know that everyone is feeling a same anxiety because everybody wants to do a good job, you know? And I think for me, at least, it is strange, right? You just have to own it and know that you remind yourself that if you're in that position, it's because you've earned it, most likely, right? If you're a person of color and you're in that position as a showrunner and someone's in charge, you have worked your ass off to be there. And so there's no sense of thinking like, I don't deserve this, because it's like, just being who you are, you so earned it. You've had to have jumped through so many obstacles, unless you're like a golden, you know, like obviously people get lucky early on. It's just like, but just your life, you know, you just are like, it's just like where you are. So you're just reminding yourself that, and like knowing that you've worked hard and you've earned it. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I agree, because I think everyone has insecurities about their, especially in a creative field. Even if you like know that and you've had enough success to be like, I'm a good writer, there's always that moment when I like submit the script to like the producer or something, or have someone read it for the first time, that part of you is like, oh God, what if it sucks? And, you know, but like, and then you just sort of push through it, and you have to just have faith in your own abilities, that maybe even if it sucks, that you can fix it, or that you have the skills or the work ethic to overcome any challenges, because nobody's perfect. And so that is the other aspect of it, I think, is balancing, is letting go of your perfectionism, and understanding that like all the people around you, those other showrunners also, or those other writers, directors, that everyone has doubts and everyone has failures and everyone has challenges, and just having some faith in your own abilities to like keep going, to get up again, to fix whatever needs fixing. And that that there's always going to be someone who says that you don't deserve it, or that you're not good enough, or that your work is flawed. And you just have to let go of that with weed.
Leon, do you want to add to that?
Well, as I said, I never felt like I'm a real writer anyway, so I always feel I'm faking it. And my loved ones make sure that I stay insecure. Like, you're not a writer. Did you write that? I'm like, I think so.
So from Himsun Chan. When pitching projects or submitting to reps, any advice on leveraging the unique asset of being Asian, but not making it the only thing special about me?
I definitely, when I'm pitching stories that are more like Asian focused, one of the points I usually make in my pitches is that because it's, well, what I always say is like, I'm here to normalize my story. I want to normalize the Asian experience. I don't want to, it's not, most of my stories are not about being Asian. It's just like for the Lifetime Christmas movie, it's not about being Asian. There's like, you know, little touches and there are things that are specific to the Asian identity, but it's literally, it's like got all the same beats as every other Lifetime Hallmark Christmas movie, and they just happen to be Asian. And so I try to make a point of that, of combining my own specific experience with a sort of universal emotional experience. So when I'm talking about stories, I always make sure to balance those aspects, because most people don't want it necessarily just, the buyers want to make sure that there is a diverse audience for it and there's as wide a possible audience for it. So unless your movie really, really is digging into like Asian identity and issues that are like very specific to that identity in that community, I would say just make sure to include the universal aspects of the story and ways in which you can emotionally connect to anyone regardless of their ethnicity.
Yeah, I would echo that.
I second that.
All right, this is a question for Leon that was in Vietnamese, but we have a rough translation. How do you feel about films where the stories about LGBTQ characters aren't played by LGBTQ actors or are not a part of the LGBT community? Also in terms of Viet Q versus mainland Viet versus mixed Viet representation. A lot of parts in that question.
Well, for the LGBT part, I think what it's called acting. You're not going to ask if someone like, do they have to be a real murderer to play a murderer? So I'm fine with that as long as that actor is right for the part, because we would want equality for a gay actor to be able to play a straight role. So we shouldn't discriminate straight actor playing gay roles, as long as during the casting process they both get the same fair consideration. Then I'm fine with that. What's the second part?
Also, mixed mainland Viet representation in films, etc. Like similar to the LGBTQ question, like people I think who are not mainland Viet portraying mainland Viet actors is what I'm guessing from the question.
Yeah, like in American films, and well, I understand it's going to be difficult to find Vietnamese actors that considering most of the parents going to be want them to be dentists or lawyers or doctors, so that's going to be that we have to take into consideration. Like one of my short films, it was written as a Vietnamese story, but living in New York during the casting process, I have to finally change it to a Chinese film, because I couldn't find any Vietnamese actors, and I couldn't afford to go to LA to find Vietnamese actors. So I decided to shoot it here, and the best actors I could find was Chinese, the Chinese lead. So I had to pick her, and then I cast everyone else around her. So basically, from Vietnamese, it turned into a Mandarin film, which I was so afraid I was going to be like boycott by the Vietnamese community. It was like, why you cast Chinese? You Vietnamese, why are you making a Chinese movie, a Chinese language film? I was like, well, because I couldn't find any Vietnamese actors. But of course, Miss Saigon 2020 or 2019 revival, they actually have a lot of Vietnamese performers in it, because now they can actually have the talent pool to choose from, versus like when Miss Saigon first came out in 1990. or 1989. There's a lot of most of the Asians performer in Miss Saigon in those original productions. They were either mostly Filipino or Japanese or Korean, because there were not enough. There were none Vietnamese performers back then, so we had to take those into consideration as well.
So I have a question from from audience for Eirene. I apologize. There isn't a ton of Asian American holiday movies. With A Sugar and Spice Holiday, how would you use your film to build out a case that there need to be more Asian American holiday movies?
Well, I mean, so when I first was talking with Lifetime about making this movie, and they were like, yeah, we've never done an Asian-centered holiday movie. And I was like, oh yeah, they don't exist, basically. And so I think it did really well. It got really great reviews. It got, from what I saw, really great feedback from the Asian communities that I'm a part of, and like the Facebook groups and everything, just saying how much it meant to them to like get their own cheesy holiday movie, you know, like they're like, finally, it's our turn too. We get one of these. And how much it meant to see themselves represented on screen and all the little details and things like that. And we got, there was some Christmas movie podcast that named us the best Christmas movie of the whole season, so it wasn't just the Asian community that enjoyed it. So I think the fact that the Asian community really came out in support of it is something that will will encourage more networks to create more Asian-based holiday movies, and also the fact that they could see that it's like something that everyone could relate to, and that it wasn't something so, Asians are so foreign that people can't watch stories about them. Like we like to have snowball fights and drink hot chocolate under the mistletoe too. And so I think, and also I just think that moving forward, because of the increase of Asian stories, because of the sort of, I feel like Asian audiences are sort of flexing their muscles, or Asian populations are sort of making their voices heard more in terms of what they want, and things more Asian shows and movies are becoming successful. That, I mean, it always comes down to economics. So basically, like once these companies realize they can make money off of these types of stories, that there is an audience for it, it'll just continue to grow. And so hopefully, I have a couple pitches out to other, for more Christmas movies. So people love Christmas movies and they love Asians. So now I'm like, yeah, I'll be your Asian Christmas girl. And yeah, so I think that basically now that there's been one and they've seen that it's successful, hopefully it won't just be the one. And next year there will be more and more. The same way that if you watch the Lifetime movies, there's like quite a few sort of like the diversity of the types of stories being told and the characters, the protagonists is expanding. And like, there was the first Asian one this year. Lifetime also had their first gay LGBTQ centered one. And so then hopefully next year there will be more, and it just keeps sort of growing as it becomes normalized.
All right, so we're going to wrap up this audience Q&A section with a question for the entire panel. What is the best way to support your work? Which websites, places can people go to purchase and buy your work from?
Mine's on Lifetime. Watch A Sugar and Spice Holiday on Lifetime multiple times on repeat. I get residuals. You can buy it on, if you can get it on demand on Lifetime, I think, and you can buy it on Amazon Prime. So there's that. Cool.
Oh, and where can we find you as well?
Oh, on Twitter, I am at Butch Woodward on Twitter.
Okay. Vicky, why don't you go next? Where can we find your work? Where can we find you?
You can find me at home, sheltering away. No, but I'm on Superstore, so you can watch Superstore on NBC. I think you can also catch it on Hulu and Peacock. That's not a paid advertisement because I don't know how Peacock works either. And yeah, that's what I'm working on now. I'm also working on a spinoff for Superstore that's in the works and development on NBC currently. So we're doing that, and you can find me on Instagram at VLou, and I'm just on Instagram. So yeah.
And Leon, and also after Leon goes, please tell us also what you have coming up.
Yes. So you can watch Song Lang. It's spelled SONGLANG. It's on Amazon Prime, Voodoo, Fandango, iTunes, YouTube, and Netflix in Asia. And yeah. And we have the my producer was like, and we have the Song Lang the limited edition coffee book just came out. So if you want to order, it's on songlangbook.com. There, I did it.
All right. Do you guys have any projects upcoming that you guys want to plug as well and tease for people to look forward to?
I'm writing another Lifetime Christmas movie, so hopefully next year that'll come out. I'm writing a Christmas movie for Freeform, so Christmas movies have been good to me.
Yeah, you're in the Christmas world.
I am. I can take all of your good vibrations for the pitch I'm about to take out with the Vietnam rom-com one that hopefully I'll be pitching to the major streamers at the end of the month. So I will hopefully have some big Vietnam news when I sell that, and then can share the details of that project with you then.
Very cool. I'm working on the spinoff. I think I mentioned it earlier.
Yeah. Leon, do you have anything coming up?
I am working on my next film, which is titled Princess Bokassa, and is based on a true story of Baxi and Martine Nguyen. They are two Vietnamese girls, half Vietnamese, half Black, in 1970s in Vietnam, who impoverished and who one day just found out that they are the daughter of Jean Bandel Bokassa, the president for life of Central Africa.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much for being in this wonderful conversation. And I can't wait to see what all of you have in store for us down the road.
Whoops.
Hi. I don't know if we lost Hoai-Tran, but thank you, Hoai-Tran, Vicky, Eirene, Leon, for this amazing conversation. You're back.
Sorry. That was a big technical mistake. Sorry. Thank you so much.
I was just saying thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our community partners, CAPE, East West Players, VAALA, and diaCritics. Again, thank you so much for the support. And as a reminder, join us next week on Thursday, January 21st for Do the Hustle, panel discussion with Viet actors at the same time and same places, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time and 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. Thank you, everyone. We're so glad you did this.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.